how did you first discover your passion for opera? And I know you grew up in the Army. Did that have any influence one way or the other?
Well, yeah, sort of. But so my parents have four children, and my younger brother and we didn't do all of the traveling that my older brother and sister did when my dad was really active in the military. So I grew up in Lakewood, Washington, which is about 45 minutes south of Seattle, and that was his final station, and he retired there. And so I will say that while my dad's military career didn't directly impact my interest for singing, I think it did impact my love for travel, which is what I do. You know, as an opera singer, it's something that not everyone has such a love for. But I love being on the road, and I do have to thank my dad's military career because um, I do remember traveling, even though it was later in his career. I got the travel bug because it was just what we did. So that definitely had an influence on my love for the whole lifestyle of being an opera singer. Now, how I got into the actual art form is kind of funny. I mean, I didn't grow up singing opera at all. I grew up in the church, singing in the choir, gospel choir, and also some jazz and a little bit of pop, but more of popular music. And so um, I was in the choir in high school. The Yeah, you had to audition for the choir, and I got in. And my teacher said, "You have quite a natural gift. Have you ever thought about taking private voice lessons?" And so I said, "Well, no, but I do love singing, and I have a background in piano. I played classical piano since I was 5 years old, so
Wow.
the classical music was always in my ear, just not classical vocal music." So when my high school teacher, said, "I think you have something. Maybe start studying privately." I I did, and I fell in love with it. Yeah, so that's kind of how it all started, and then I ended up auditioning for conservatories and music schools around the country, and got accepted into the Manhattan School of Music in New York, and yeah, the rest is kind of history.
But what about opera? Because jazz and opera are really different. So what drew you to the opera piece?
Well, yeah, I mean, my teacher, she recognized that I just had this gift where my voice would kind of overpower everyone else in the choir. And so as opera singers, we don't use microphones. Um, it's completely unamplified. It's the power of our own
I don't think I
diaphragm and
knew
all of
that.
the years of training. Yeah. So the fact that my voice was just had a natural resonance to it that really stood out, that gave her the idea, okay, maybe you should consider classical singing and opera. And I'll tell a quick story. I was an athlete. I played basketball, and I was going to college to play basketball, but my coach basically gave me an ultimatum, and he said, "You have to choose between the singing thing and your team." And it was a really traumatic and dramatic,
Oh, wow.
very important game that he sat me on the bench for the whole time, and I was a captain. And I just remember thinking, this is this is a sign. I really started singing and loving it. And my coach just I was so hurt back then, but in hindsight, it
Seemed
was
to have worked out.
I think it worked out, and I still play for fun, so that's really nice. But when my choir teacher, suggested that I start studying privately, and I found a local teacher who I'm still very close with today, I went down the rabbit hole, and um I loved this art form. I'd never been exposed to it. And then I immediately thought, well, is it something that, Black people do as well? Because when I thought of opera singers, I never thought of Black opera singers. And so she introduced me to some of the most incredible opera singers that are also Black American. And I just thought, wow, I could do this too. Why? I mean, I just didn't know. So it opened a whole new world, and I just really fell in love with it. So I was about 17 going on 18.
So
Wow.
you dropped us off at the Oh, I got into some conservatories and the rest is history. But there's a lot, has to be a lot more to this. I mean,
Oh,
so
yeah.
much you have to do to become an opera singer. Languages, how you present yourself, the vocal
Absolutely.
challenges. Tell us, how did that, from there till you've got your first, role on a stage?
Well, I will say, I mean, this art form, being a musician in general, just takes a lot of discipline. It is, I consider us athletes. And having been an athlete, it's a very similar practice in that you have to stay persistent, diligent. You have to deal with bad days and overcome them. So I went to Manhattan School of Music with very little knowledge of opera and the classical voice. And I studied so hard. I mean, New York was my playground. So I was buying the cheap seats at the Metropolitan Opera and Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall and just infusing my whole being with classical music to try to catch up, for lack of better terms. And at MSM, Manhattan School of Music, I took languages: Italian, German, French, Spanish, Russian, um, because we sing in so many. I think I've sung in 11 languages at this point. And that's what opera singers do. We sing in many different languages because the art form is, well, comes from Italy.
Those darn composers didn't do it in English, come on.
Exactly. Although there are some amazing operas in English that I'm starting to sing.
Okay.
But
Right.
the majority, yeah, Italian, French, German. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's a constant um, working project. What do I want to say? It's a constant,
Work in progress. Yeah. I mean,
yes, work in progress. It
yeah,
never
yeah.
ends. So, um, the goal is to be fluent in all the languages. I'm conversational in many of them.
Wow.
But
That's
I take,
impressive.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. And it's funny because I don't, it's just so second nature now. I don't really stand back and think about it and just like actually marvel at all that I have done and have to do for this career. But um, it really is quite amazing. So the languages, and then I still take voice lessons, and I have voice coachings, which help with the kind of the style of it. And voice lessons are more technical because, we make this sound, but what you hear as an audience member is very different than what I hear. So we have to go off of feeling. So it's like it's a lifelong um, study, because the voice is also always changing. A singer doesn't really hit their prime into their mid 40s.
Hmm.
So it's
So
a
you got a
long
long way to
game.
go.
Well, I don't know about long, but yes, I do have some time. I have some time. And so it's the long haul, and it's a lot of people, they quit, or they just say, I've had enough of this, because it really is a lot of investment. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of sacrifice as well. So I'm at a point now where I feel like, I mean, I've been doing this professionally for over 10 years, but I feel like I'm now just really hitting my stride, which is exciting because I just feel there's so many doors being unlocked now, vocally, and also just personally. I approach music in a different way, having lived life a little bit.